crois que c'est des employés. Hein? Je crois que c'est des employés. Putain, c'est big.
Hi, everyone. So today we are gonna talk about why is it an asset to hire a refugee, and we'll begin to get a panorama on the refugee situation worldwide with some figures to start with, and maybe some words on the profile of the refugees, where they're from, and their hard skills. So maybe, Josephine, you want to start? One figure?
Yeah, I'd like to start this topic by saying I feel uncomfortable that we have to discuss the fact of why should we hire refugees. It's like you'd ask, why do we have to hire black people? Why should we hire women? Why should we hire human beings? Refugee is not an identity, it's a status you're given because you're forced to migrate. So it's just a bit of a weird question first, right? The second thing is this question assumes that we have to help them when in my daily job, I see refugee entrepreneurs creating jobs for Europeans. So it's just like, I want to break a bit the paradigm of this talk, saying that, yeah, it's good we talk about hiring people with refugee status, but it's also good to look at the fact that from the 68 million refugees, displaced people we have on this planet, half of them are under 18 years old. So we need to invest in their education and their access to education. And for some of them, they are entrepreneurs and they're creating jobs in our country. So we need to also see bigger than just like, how can we help them because they need our help.
Yeah, I very much agree with this. Actually, in the company that I represent, Chatterbox, refugees is definitely not a handout that we give them. It's a handout. There are the people that are teaching our learners, so they're refugee tutors. We connect them with learners around the world for language, and they are the ones helping learners to learn about language and culture. And they really have, that's the assets I think that you're referring to. We tend to see refugees as a problem or an issue, that is the problem. They have a lot of assets. They may not be native speakers of the host communities where they're in, but you can use their language, you can use their experience overseas as an asset in recruitment and in so many industries. In the education industry, I think I heard someone before talking about the health industry. It's a fact now that there are people from all backgrounds living in host communities around the world, and obviously in hospitals you also need people to be speaking, to understand language and culture, to assist everyone. We're just part of the same community now, so I completely agree. It's not, we should not look at it as an issue. And also to answer your question, I think just in terms of numbers, there is going to be 1 billion refugees by 2050 due to climate change. So it's just a fact. We can't isolate 1 billion people.
Okay, thank you. So now let's focus maybe on soft skills, because many recruiters are taking them into account more and more, because it's really an asset now for startups, for example. So what are the specific soft skills that a refugee can develop during his path or her path? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a bit of a funny angle, but I think they are, as refugees coming to host communities, there are social connectors, and there is at the moment still in many communities there's isolation, and there are very often they carry out these social connections that they want to create with the host community, and that a lot of people are refraining from having. And so by employing refugees in your company or hiring refugees as a language tutor or whichever, you're creating a social connection, and they are very, very good. They are excellent social connectors because they're interestingly motivated to connect with their host communities. So that to me, from talking to refugees at Chatterbox, that's the first thing that comes through.
Josephine?
It's really difficult to say a refugee has those soft skills and then compared to other people, right? It's the same again as a black person, a woman. It doesn't make so much sense. The only thing we can say about someone with the refugee status is most likely they've lost their home country or access to their home country. They've lost their house. They've lost maybe their families, jobs, and assets. Basically, they've lost a lot of capital. And if there's one thing they want is to get back on track, if they can, if they're not like stuck with depression and with just post-traumatic PTSD. So obviously a job and moving forward is only the kind of solution and thing they are looking for. So there's that. The second thing is, yes, they don't speak the language, they don't have the same culture, but so do I. I'm French in Portugal. I don't speak the language of Portuguese, and I don't have the same culture, right? So the difference is not much. And lastly, so we've got approximately 1.5 million people that came to Europe now. They're here. Some are not able to go back. Most of them are not able to go back home. We're going to have them as Europeans, and they want to be European, right? And they're going to create jobs for you because they're going to be entrepreneurs. And they also are people that have needs. They have to have breakfast in the morning. They buy, they go to the laundry. They're spending money like any human being. So they're a market to address. And hiring refugees within your teams is also just making sure that your products and your services that you're delivering for local people address that part of population that's not addressed. So you're sort of opening your market to another market of a second middle class that's coming. But again, I'm very uncomfortable with the terms like refugee when it's just an experience, an unfortunate experience that more and more of us are going to go through. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe can you share some successful stories on a refugee who has been hired by a startup, for example, or a bigger corporation?
I just want to highlight 2 of our projects that won last week our competition. Techfugees. Techfugees is a startup based in New York that's using refugees across the world to annotate images to help AI. That's done worldwide for companies. So you basically get a lot of people with refugee status or displaced people that wouldn't be seen by employers because it's seen like a refugee can't be employed when it can. It's legally okay, and it's like another person. It's just a normal person. And they're not seen as talented when, they can do stuff. They were doing it before. So they're annotating those images and are able to create the AI of tomorrow. And Techfugees is doing this. And this girl who created it it's fantastic because she's tapping into a huge market, a huge population that's not seen as a talent. And she's offering them with employment opportunities to build the AI of tomorrow. So that's wonderful. Another example is, another winner is Antura and the Letters. They've provided free open source education for refugees across the world, and especially in camps, so that they can be coming onto this digital world that we live in and that we're all transiting to. Because we have to remember, and I think all of us in this room are migrants of the digital world. We're migrating there. And some of us in this room are going to be refugees of that world if we don't get onto that train wagon. So it's almost like, let's not create a double kind of refugee that's not part of society. It's not even part of our digital world. And I think it's important, and I think those 2 projects are illustrating that need from the tech industry to just get the politics out, get the emotions out. We have talented people out there in Europe. All they want is to get back on track with their lives and just get them a job. That's it.
And similarly, so I work for Chatterbox, and as I mentioned, we connect refugee tutors with learners. And the way we do that is we connect them based on personal interest and professional interest. So we'll pair an engineer who wants to learn Arabic for his company or his company, and pair him with a tutor from Syria who was an engineer as well. And so some success stories have been, we have a tutor, Mohammed. He was a journalist and activist from Syria. And we actually have a lot of NGO workers and a lot of journalists actually from the UK who are learning way beyond the language with Mohammed. And he is exploiting, it's so relevant to him to teach his language through this lens of his professional background. He's creating a network as well for himself, and that's, I think, and that happens, so that happens to him is quite specific as he's a journalist. We also have one of our first tutors, actually, Hala, who is also from Syria. She used to be a teacher in Syria, and she had completely given up on being a teacher again, because she's in the UK, she doesn't have a, her professional background isn't recognized and whatnot. And she's now teaching to entire schools in the UK, kids, introducing them to Arabic and Arabic culture. So, and she's, I mean, I'm not going to give numbers, but she's made quite a bit of money with us as well. So it also helps her gain confidence and a professional identity. So that's, there really is, I mean, that talent is just waiting to be had, really.
Yeah, and they're, as again, they're not waiting to be picked up.
Yeah.
Some of them are creating their own jobs, right? And I think what you're saying is when you welcome them, and I've seen so many refugees telling me this, like, I was welcomed in that country, and so I wanted to contribute and give back. Mm-hmm. If we don't welcome them, then what kind of society we create? So we don't have a refugee crisis, because if we're going to have a refugee crisis, then sorry, we're going to have it for years. As you said, 1 billion by the IOM predicted in 2050 of climate refugees. World Bank numbers are under, it's 147 million. But the case and facts are here. People are going to be forced to migrate because of climate change or war. Mm-hmm. So if we want to stay stuck in the problem, we can. Or we can look at the solutions and we can say and call it out. It's a crisis of hospitality. It's a crisis of welcoming those people. It is not, and it's a political crisis. It is not them the problem.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So last question, maybe.
I'd love to know if there are some refugees or some people in this room that are, I don't want to stigmatize, but I'm sure so many of you here have a migration pattern and could talk here. And I wish we'd have here someone with a migration or refugee experience here on this stage next time. Next time Web Summit, you bring them here instead of us talking about them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No?
So last question, maybe. Imagine I am a startup. I want to hire a refugee. How can I find these talents, and what are the issues I might encounter?
You call us.
Yeah. Well, we're hiring, but no. Well, there are different platforms actually for different professions. I know the European Union has one for researchers, scientist researchers. So there are all the labs around Europe who are open to, or who are looking to hire refugees because they have, again, as I was mentioning before, they have experience overseas that is very valuable. So the European Union has created this platform that connects people of refugee background with labs who are looking to hire these special talents. So depending on the profession, there are different platforms that are available. Not in everything. I'm actually going to the European Commission in a couple of weeks to suggest that they do the same for education in the education sector, because there's a huge lack of talents in the education sector in Europe. And so, yeah, there are different ways depending on the professions.
I mean, to recruit them, it's like to recruit anyone with skills, right? So if you want to recruit talented people, you can go to places. We have talented people on our group. So if you have jobs that are in tech, please just tell us at Techfugees and we'll post it on the group. And they're no different from others. Yes, there's the language barrier, and it's for a startup, it's difficult because as a startup, you have limited resources, and if the person doesn't speak the language and is having difficulty speak the language, you're already having a hard time just do your job. So having them incorporated and stuff, it's much more a role for big companies to hire refugees and get them trained and welcomed than a startup. But then again, the startup world doesn't look on diplomas and recognition of competences. If you can do the thing, you can do it. It's just do it and learn by doing. And those guys learn fast. If they can learn a language, you can learn also fast. So we've seen that we've launched a women refugee program in France. And the girls were just learning so fast. And they were ready for the startup world more than anyone else because they were getting on the go. And there again, they're not just looking for jobs, they're creating jobs. Lean is an architect from Damascus, couldn't get her diploma recognized as an architect in France. So she said, you know what, I'm going to create my own company. She's now leading a VR company to help to create a tourist experience in Paris for people that want to see how Paris looked like in the 1901 when we had the Universal Exhibition. And she's the proof that if you don't come up with jobs, they'll come up with jobs for themselves. And that's how it's going to go. And so entrepreneurship is also one big avenue for displaced people and forcibly displaced people.
Okay, thank you very much, Josephine and Guillemette. We are out of time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Voilà.